Tiami, do you have the controls or do I? I should have the controls, right?
You should, because I came in as a panelist.
Okay, cool. For some reason I'm not seeing who's here right now.
See 25 participants.
See, I don't see, oh wait, there we go. That's right. I always get confused by these screens. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'll give a couple minutes for folks to get here. Thank you everyone who's here for joining us for the launch of our newest episode of PWNCares, Healthy Beyond ARVs, taking care of mind and spirit. We'll give a couple of minutes for folks to get on, but as we do that, I just want to give you a little bit of a background. So for those who are not familiar, and also for the recording, this is being recorded. A little bit more about that in just a minute. But we are Positive Women's Network USA. We're a national advocacy organization and membership body of women living with HIV. And PWNCares is a special interactive series that we have been able to put together with the support of ViV Healthcare's Positive Action for Women grant. And so basically this is a series that's by and for women living with HIV. Women living with HIV came up with the subjects of all of these videos. They're the folks being interviewed in the videos who are on these virtual coffee table chats, sharing their stories and offering, words of wisdom that they've learned throughout the years and answering your questions. And that's, who the videos are created for as well. So this is for everyone. And we're really glad that you could be here. And this is actually the 5th video in the series. There are 4 other ones that you can find on our website. Which I'm going to put that in the chat box. It's at our website, and from when you get to the homepage of our website, you'll see it up in the top right-hand corner, PWNCares. If you click there, you can find all the videos that we've done this far. And there will be new ones coming out over the next few months as well, so stay tuned for those as well. And so just a few housekeeping things as we get started. And I will let our panelists introduce themselves in just a minute. As we get started with this, just to kind of point out a few things. So the chat box, please feel free to say hi to each other, communicate as much as you want in the chat box. If you have questions for the panelists, we ask that you actually use the Q&A box, which at the bottom of your screen, there should be a little black bar that goes across and you should see Q&A. I think it looks the same on your screen as it looks on mine. And so if you click on that, you can put your questions there, and that way they don't kind of get lost in the chat box, because sometimes people are very chatty and the questions we may not see them in time. They may get lost if you put them in the chat box. So I ask that if you have questions for the panelists, or if you have something that you would like to share with everyone, that you use the Q&A box for that as opposed to the chat box. So feel free throughout, both during the video and afterwards, if you have a question for our panelists, please go ahead and put it in the chat, in the Q&A box, and we will answer it as soon as we're at a point where we can. I'll be facilitating, so I will see those questions and I will share them with the panelists. If there is a specific person that you would like to ask it to, feel free to put their name as well. Otherwise, we'll just throw the question out to everybody. And you can also share your own experiences or things that you've learned. If there's something that you feel like other folks would benefit from hearing, please feel free to put that in the Q&A box as well, and we can read those out loud. And just so you know, this is being recorded, but you will not be identified by name if you're not a panelist. So as long as you're just a participant, the chat will not be recorded. And the questions in the Q&A with your name will not be there, so don't worry. You don't need to be concerned about anyone knowing that you were part of this if that's a concern for you. You can be totally anonymous and you can still ask questions that way too. And thank you, Chiron, for the Pause Media Awards for Best Video Series. Yes, vote for PWNCares. So great, let's go ahead and get started by having our panelists introduce themselves briefly. So I was just gonna go in alphabetical order by last name. So we'll start with Bree.
Of course, I knew I would be the first one to introduce myself. Hi everyone, my name is Bree Campbell. I am currently in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I live. I organize in Detroit. I'm on the board of PWN. I've been living with HIV since 2010. I'm a woman of trans experience. So really, one thing I really want to just name before we start having this conversation is that I'm not an expert of taking care of yourself, right? And that just reminding people that it's self-care practices, right? So throughout this journey of taking care of ourselves, it's always going to be a practice. So I just really advise people just to be gentle with themselves while taking care of themselves.
Awesome, thank you so much. And yeah, I don't think any of us here, though correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think any of us here are like licensed, say, psychologists or psychiatrists or anything like that. So this is just real talk, you know, from person to person about like what folks have been through and what works for them. And everyone is still kind of going through stuff. So, you know, nobody has like reached, I think, that pinnacle where everything in their world is absolutely perfect, because I don't think that exists. So it's sort of like, how do we manage from day to day, and what helps, what doesn't? That's kind of the conversation. So thank you for naming that, Bree. And then Alicia.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alicia Diggs, originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but I currently live in Greensboro, North Carolina. If you looked at the video, you may have seen Wilmington, but I am actually in Greensboro, North Carolina, which is probably about an hour and 15 from Charlotte, if you have not heard of Greensboro. So I've been living positive for 17 years now, and I don't know. What I do definitely want to say to everyone that there's no right or wrong way for self-care. Just do it. Just do it. There's no right or wrong way. Whatever your self-care is, if it means a bubble bath and candles and a nice little toddy, or if it means vegging in front of the television, walking in the park, whatever it is, just make sure you take care of yourself. That's what I'd just like to leave with everyone right now.
Awesome, thank you. And then Tondi.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. Hi, I'm Tondi. I am out here in Bay Point where I live. I'm from Bay Point. I work at an organization called World. Women organized to respond to life-threatening diseases. I do a lot of like peer advocacy there. I really love advocacy and getting involved with like legislation. I love lobby days. I love PWN. We're trying to start up a chapter here in the Bay Area again, but hopefully we'll be successful at it. And as far as self-care goes, I'm really learning about that. I've been positive for 3 years now, and before that, I wasn't really taking care of myself. I had to learn that the hard way. And so being diagnosed has taught me the importance of being around people who are like supportive and like-minded, and who understand my journey. But also it's taught me a lot about myself and how to have compassion for myself. And I find that the more compassion I have for myself, I'm able to overfill my cup and put that overflow into other people. So I feel like self-care is very important because you know, you're your best vessel, and you have, well, it's like you can't give anything that you don't have. So you have to always make sure your cup is overflowing. Thank you. Love to be a part of this.
Awesome, thank you, Tondi. And just a note, so Alicia mentioned that the location on that it gives for her on the video is actually inaccurate. I apologize for that. We had a little mix up doing those, and I think Tondi, yours is as well. It says Pittsburgh instead of Bay Point. So when I have them fix Alicia's, I'll have them fix yours too. So just apologies ahead of time. And that was my fault, actually.
Like I'm like, Bay Point is not too far. It like used to be West Pittsburgh, so it's kind of accurate.
Yeah, I asked Arnita, because originally he had said Oakland, and I asked Arnita, and she's like, no, I think it's Pittsburgh, and so I gave him that, and then later I was like, oh, but it's Bay Point, but yeah, they're close, but
yeah, they're close. All right,
cool, great. And then finally, Angel.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Angel Stetson. I'm originally from Chicopee Falls, Massachusetts, but I've been the last 30 years in Sarasota, Florida, so this is where I always say that I'm from, Sarasota. Currently, I've been living with HIV since 1997. I deal with mental health since I can remember, since like forever, and never really addressed it. Currently, I'm helping to restore the rights to felons so that we can have a better voter turnout here in Florida, because there's a lot of felons and we need more voters. Anyway, I'm happy to be a part of this journey, and watching the trailer had me take a good look at myself and talking about the self-care, and I would jump into volunteering and the advocacy and the blogging and, oh yes, I can do all this, and I was just ignoring what was really at the core happening to me. And since then, I'm actually in mental health outpatient treatment 5 days a week, and it's just something I chose to do, because when I'm around you women, my groups, I feel the most secure. And putting myself into these groups, and even though they're strangers, they're just people I haven't met yet, and it turns out that I'm really enjoying my time there, and it feels like self-care to go in and explore different areas of my mental health with other people that understand it. And without having volunteered for this, I'm not sure I would have got there. So this is really important. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And just a note, so Tiffany Marrero is also in the video. She's working and she plans on joining us, but she's going to be a little late. So just an FYI that, yeah, she should be joining us a little bit later. Cool. Well, thank you all so much. And once again, because I always do this, I forgot to introduce myself. I am Jenny Smith-Camejo, and I am the Communications Director for Positive Women's Network USA. And we also have our Communications Assistant, Tiami Luckett, with us up there waving. Tiami, did you want to say anything? No? Okay, that's fine.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for being with us. Okay, and so without further ado, I want to go ahead and show this video, which we're very excited about. So I am going to be sharing my screen with you all and sharing my computer audio. If there are any issues with the audio or with seeing it, please put that in the chat box right away and let me know before, because every now and then there are technical difficulties, so I'm really going to try to avoid it this time. So here we go. Can folks see it? Yeah, okay.
A lot of times we have so much going on in life that it just distracts us from calmness, and it's like we can't find a way to relax so that we can kind of categorize everything. Everything gets jumbled up, you become frustrated, you have all these different thoughts, and sometimes you're not even able to control those thoughts.
Housing is mental health, food is mental health, having friends is mental health.
So if you're able to stay mentally healthy, then you're able to cope with everyday stresses. It means a lot to be mentally healthy, especially living with HIV. It really is important.
I tend to be too much. So people want to medicate me. So that's a challenge, because I do suffer from anxiety, and I've had traumatic experiences, but it doesn't necessarily mean my go-to is to medicate me so that I'm sedated. My brain is foggy enough with everything that I go through on a daily basis, just life.
As a child growing up with or living, thriving with HIV, they acknowledge that there's a gap, right? That we have to talk to these kids and love on them and help them grow. I was so used to knowing what to say to get out of it at that point, because I didn't know how to identify the abuse I was going through. I didn't know that was a part of it. I didn't know HIV stigma was a part of it and a lack of support I had around it. I didn't know any of that at 10 years old or 14 years old. And it was hard because even my partner couldn't understand, right? Like he was a brown man, cis man, and it was hard for him to see the panic because I couldn't paint him a picture of my whole lived experience. That's a big picture.
I was just mostly doing like support groups and going there. And then my mental illness showed up in the form of anxiety and depression. So then that's when I called. My county has a mental health access line. And
just experiencing a lot of trauma in my life and, you know, having different thoughts, suicidal thoughts, you know, depression. And as I got older, dealing with more things as life came at me and I had to just embrace life, I realized then, wow, mental health is real. Mental health is really real, and oh my goodness, it's affecting me. There were times in my life that, you know, some of us casually, we talk to ourselves, and a lot of times that comes with, oh, did I do da? But no, things happen in my life to a point that I was that person walking down the street talking to myself about situations, blocking the entire world out. And, you know, and I was quote unquote put together. So, you know, going to work, going to school, and I would find myself in my own world by myself, just talking, having this out loud conversation about traumatic things in my life that I was dealing with. And then that right there honestly helped me to understand the homeless person, the person who is going through schizophrenia and all of these other things and taking medications for them. And I'm like, wow, this is real. And that's all I could really say.
So for me, I think one of the things that I kind of remember now when I get like down and out and depressed is like, it's a wave, like, right? And kind of like monitor myself and make sure that like, I'm not hitting the bottom of the ocean, right? That like, you know, my water goes up and comes down, but never like depletes itself. When I'm having those hard moments, I always remind myself that this is what it feels like to grow. I always think about trees and like, you know, especially like trees that are like hundreds of years old, right? They're big, they have like this really nice bark, they have leaves, right? And I'm like, they're solid though, right? So of course when they grow, that something's like splitting off and like breaking and things are falling, right? And so I think of like my life, my mental health as like this tree, right? And there's no way possible that it can grow without like, you know, busting out of the seam, shedding something, or giving up something. So for me, I think that's been really helpful because I get into these spaces where I'm like, oh my gosh, like the world is horrible, I feel horrible, everything's horrible, but I'm like, but wait, what inside of you is changing at this moment? And like really like finding that thing and like focusing on it really helps me in my work.
A lot. I got a lot of support. And then I started, you know, listening to that support and going to these support groups, and then like started engaging with my doctor, asking them questions. I get a lot of support services from like my social worker and all that. You know, I stopped drinking. That helped, and doing 12-step programs really helped. And then I started. What the main fundamental thing is I started making myself a priority, and I started finding ways to improve my self-care.
Happened at 20-something. So I also think I had to be ready for the counseling. He helped me to identify my triggers a lot because I had a panic attack, but he helped me to see that it's important to let the feelings out and to identify them, but to let it out, like to just let it all out, and then figure out after you're done, like done crying and screaming, getting mad, figure out where that anger is coming from.
And I'm reaching out, I'm blogging, I journal, so I'm starting to focus on the tools I have and actually take them out of the toolbox and use them. And being in this space right now, being in a good space around the women that I'm with, really grounds me. And it gives me the opportunity to really think about everything I do know, all the tools I have, and to use them. But given a stressful situation, I can't tell you I would remain calm like this. And although I know the things, sometimes I have to really, not sometimes, mostly I struggle through being newly off the addiction, newly into recovery partially.
I had some counseling. I had, counseling, maybe about a year, and then I decided, a few years go by, I'm going into some depression, I'm slipping, I can recognize, the change in me, I need to talk to somebody. And I would find a happy space. I would have to get away. Music is my serenity. So it would be music, it would be a beach, it would be a lake, it would be the park. And I'd have to find something. If it meant vegging out in front of the TV for days, whatever it was, I have really embraced who I am as a person. Like, I really love me. I'm in tune with myself. I recognize when there's a change, when there's some type of shift, and it's like I know what to do so that I can control that.
Mental health for me has really expanded over the last 3 years, just being in social justice spaces and just hearing about different people's experiences. Being around like-minded people who kind of like share your experiences has kind of like really helped me like think differently about like my own personal mental health, and it's actually helped me become more mentally sound. Like, there are people in my life who like reach out to me on a daily basis that just like help me process, that make me feel like loved. If I'm not mentally sound, there's no way that I can do this work, so just kind of keeping that in check.
It's very exciting, and it's very rewarding to overcome some of the things that I'm overcoming and to be doing it. And I feel like I'm doing it with a large group of people, and I have, I really have support, and that's all they show me. So that's my therapy, if I could just call them, And being a part of these groups, HINAC and the Speak Up Summit, they give me, I can just go into a safe place and try it out, and then find the love, and then I can continue to follow these people who I'm like, do I want them as mentors? Are they thoroughly good people? And that is so therapeutic for me, because then I can trust a little before I have to trust wholly with my body. So
I would just sit in a lobby area because I just felt like that was a safe space for me. And so I would just push everyone from the front desk to the physicians, everyone's buttons. And then finally, my prevention doctor is like, here, join Youth Initiative with NMAC. And I don't know, when I walked through that hotel in DC, I think I breathed for the first time. Like, something in me just switched. And I think I got the clinic feeling at a big level, right? This is a big safe space for me. And there was black and brown people, and they were there for me, and they loved on me.
And then I started doing advocacy work, which really helped me stand on my 2 feet, because it really made me realize that I had a voice, and I have value, and I have worth, and I am important to my community. And it affects, how you take care of yourself, whether you take your meds, how you interact with other people. It means a lot to be mentally healthy, especially living with HIV. It really is important.
Wow. I'm going to give a big round of applause. Oh, you can only hear me clapping, but that's okay. Give a big round of applause to the women in this video. And if I can just say that I think it takes a lot of courage to be willing to talk about this subject, because I think most of us know that there really is a lot of stigma around mental health. You know, similarly and differently from HIV, but there's sort of a double stigma there, I think. And so, you know, being willing to go on camera and talk to the world about experiences with mental health, I think is just really, wow. I mean, it takes courage, and I really admire and appreciate everyone who is in that video so much. You guys are really, really awesome. And so I do want to give, before we start taking questions from folks who are participating, and also please go ahead and feel free if you have questions, whether it's for individual folks or just in general, or experiences that you would like to share with everyone. Feel free to go ahead and start putting those in the Q&A box. But before we start addressing them out loud, I was going to give our panelists an opportunity if there was anything that they wanted to add or any context that they would like to give to anything they said in the video. I just wanted to give them an opportunity to do that. So do my panelists have anything they would like to share before we start taking questions?
I actually would. I would just really like the listeners and the watchers to know that you are not alone. And, you know, a lot of things that you go through, many of us have gone through, are still going through, and not just us, but other people who are in your vicinity, who are in your circle. So just know that you're not alone, and it's very, very important to talk to people when you feel like you need it. That's a part of self-care. Talking to other people, letting them know how you feel, letting them know, reaching out to people. So, you know, it's just always on my heart to let people know that you're not alone, because many times I know I felt like I was alone when I was going through my mental health issues, and too embarrassed to even tell anybody, or just so used to being this independent, I have it together type person. But you're human and you have feelings, and there's always somebody who's going to be in your corner. So just know that you're not alone.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Does anyone else have something they would like to add to what they said in the video?
Hey, hi. Since addressing my mental health, and I just want to say, since coming back from that trip, I went to Indiana. I went to Massachusetts for self-care, and then I went to Indiana for the HIV is Not a Crime. Hi, there's Tiffany. And since I came back and I started posting a lot of this stuff on social network and getting a lot more involved and not being so afraid of the mental health status, you know, how I felt mentally was being affected by my neighborhood. Well, since my neighborhood has seen a lot of the work that we've done, and then the trailer came out, I'm like being welcomed around and asking all kinds of questions, and people want to know where the condoms are. They want to know about HIV criminalization, and they want to talk about HIV and AIDS, like out loud in public. And I'm like, yay. So, I mean, I am nowhere near helping them. I keep citing them to other people right now because the self-care is too important for me. Like I believe it was Bree said, I got to take care of myself before I can continue to do any good advocacy work. So I'm going to be back off Facebook after this. I'm just here for this today, and back into care for probably another 30, 60 days before y'all see me resurface, doing my voters' rights on the down low. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Angel. And I do want to welcome, Tiffany is here with us now. You want to say hi, Tiffany, and introduce yourself real briefly?
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me good? Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Okay, yay. Hi, so I'm in my car. Sorry for being so late. But what was it that I had to say? My name is Tiffany, and what else do you want to know?
Where you live, and if you just want to say a few words about why you participated in this.
Okay. Well, I currently reside in Broward County, so I'm in sunny Florida. I don't know if you can tell by the glare that there's lots of sun. And why I decided to do this, I think it's important to uplift the voices of Black women in HIV. So I think it's important to bring mental health to the forefront. I think it's important that we, being women, especially women of color, we always have to talk about the things that affect us every day, especially women and who are not just living with HIV, but people who work in HIV care too. So the peers and the educators all should really be talking about our mental health and the things that we do. And I'm just here to make sure that we're celebrating our survival, that we're celebrating all the work that we do, that we're talking about it, and that we're bringing to light all the stuff that we do. So that's why I'm a part of this. So thank you guys for having me. Yay. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here and for making it in the middle of your work day. I know that that's always a challenge, so thank you for being here. And then just bringing it back, did any other panelists have anything that they would like to share around the video before we start taking questions from folks, from participants?
Yeah, I would like to share something. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I thought it was a good video and it came together well. And the main message came across. And Bree, I love your analogy about the tree thing. I'm gonna take and use that because that's like real talk. Like you do, like when you start out taking care of yourself, you do start out like a skinny, thing that needs like support handles. And then like you start growing and you get more stable the more you like cultivate and get tools and stuff like that. And you become like a big old, oak tree or a willow tree or something that's got some girth and, you shed some skin. I like that analogy. I'm gonna start using that. But everyone else did a great job. And welcome, Tiffany.
Hi.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. I love it too.
Yeah, I think it's really great, and I also like that. Some trees they do things snap off. So some trees also can bend. If the trees and I'm thinking because I live in Miami right now, and our hurricane-proof trees are the ones that are more flexible and can.
Oh my God! Right.
Those are the ones that don't fall and like crash into our roof.
Amen, Jenny. I'm with you.
They're the trees we like around here. Cool, great. Did anyone else have anything they'd like to add? And then we'll start taking questions. Okay, hearing nothing. I'm going to open this up to questions, comments, feedback. If folks want to share their own experiences anonymously, if you put it in the Q&A box, I will read it out, but I won't read your name. So feel free to ask questions or share your own experience. So there is a question here from a recently graduated medical student who will be pursuing psychiatry, possibly HIV psychiatry, and would love to hear about positive and negative experiences with psychiatrists and what you would like to see from a future mental health provider for people living with HIV. Do folks who have visited psychiatrists have any thoughts on this, things they would like to share? I think this is a really important question because our provider. Please go ahead.
So with that, first of all, thank you for coming into this because we desperately, as social worker, we need more mental health services in this field. But a big thing that I have experienced with various different providers that I've had is somebody who I think is able to see the social impacts of HIV is really important. So sometimes I've noticed that they really focus on the health aspect and they kind of forget that, like, as a young woman, like in my case, was in college, graduated, trying to kind of figure out now like family planning and dating and all that stuff, that it's not so much like the HIV as like a being a health marker is the concern, but more of how do I navigate in a society that isn't too nice to folks or systems in HIV. So when you're in this field, just keep in mind that I think a lot of, and just maybe just for me, and if you're dealing with younger people and young folks, is you know, what are some tools or what are some coping mechanisms that you can really help us to deal with? I mean, until we get society on board with understanding what HIV is and its implications on society, you know, what you can do to provide us with tools to help us kind of navigate. So if you're dealing with a 27-year-old who was newly diagnosed in college, or a 20-year-old, you know, what are some things you have to be cognizant of? And that is, you know, dating, it's disclosure, it's safety, it's dealing with like potential homelessness, college, because those things intersect. I know when I first got into counseling, I didn't know how to elect for health insurance without disclosing my status, and my job decided to offer health insurance. I didn't know how do I deal with not electing and giving a reason, or having to take off for appointments really early for work, and just dealing with those things. That's, I think, a big thing to keep in mind, is to just to focus and understand the social implications of HIV. So that's my point. That's my little piece.
Awesome, thank you. Do other panelists have positive and or negative experiences with psychologists or psychiatrists that they'd like to share? And what you would expect from a therapist?
Oh,
go ahead,
Go ahead, Alicia. Oh, okay, I'll go. Okay, so for me, I don't think it was a psychiatrist per se, but out here in the suburbs, there are a few like medical providers who are quite ignorant of HIV and still operate in stigma, treat you a bit differently after they learn about what your medications are and what they do. So I've encountered that. As far as like the psychiatrist goes, I've like encountered, I mostly went to like a therapist, like a marriage therapist or whatever. And she was very understanding and very like relatable. I would say to someone who's going in the field, like exactly the same thing Tiffany related to, was like, because I know medical providers tend to focus mostly on like medical issues, but also there are social issues. There are things I talk with my nurse practitioner, my primary, like about disclosure, about, especially because he's the first person I see, like, and then my social worker too, especially when it comes to like getting services too. So there are going to be like some issues that intersect, like homelessness, that affect, you know, a person's care, whether they take their medication or not, because someone who's facing homelessness is probably not going to take care of themselves as opposed to someone who's stable in housing, you know.
Right.
So those are things to like think about.
When I've had to, or made the decision to speak with a therapist, I was connected through the AIDS service organization I was a part of, which was very important to me because I honestly didn't want to have to, you know, talk with a therapist who was not educated on or familiar with the HIV community. So it was a lot easier to speak to someone who was familiar with the HIV community, and also understand as a therapist, psychiatrist, what have you, that, you know, while there are a lot of people living with HIV, that is the bottom of the totem pole for many people. There's so many other things going on. So just a word of advice from a person living with HIV, to not focus so much as a therapist on the quote unquote HIV aspect of our lives, but more so everything. See the whole person, listen to the whole person, because again, a person living with HIV, that is truly at the bottom of the totem pole. Like Tandy mentioned, you know, homelessness, joblessness, there's so many other things that are a factor as to why someone needs to speak with a therapist. So just keep that in mind, to have an open mind.
Hi. My best, are you done? I'm sorry. Can you hear? My best experience was I went to, Connie invited me to Nevada, and I've never seen, and that's what got me focused on going into a group setting. You couldn't tell who it was. It was a gay and lesbian community center, and so we were all struggling with our own stuff. But there were some people there that were dealing with HIV and some who were not. But it was such a welcoming area that I could say, hey, I'm having trouble with addiction today. Hey, I'm having trouble with stigma today, and it wasn't like a weird topic. Whereas if, like I had put in the chat, if I walk into an AA meeting and say, okay, hey, someone having trouble, staying away from drink or drug today, that would be me. Hey, has anybody had any HIV stigma today? Yes, I'm about to shoot my head off today, and it's just not appropriate. And I find that the therapists that I go to at my clinic are just not knowledgeable. Like one of the other panelists just said, Tiffany said it. They're not aware of what the social stigma or, what's happening in real society, in real life. What do I deal with on day to day? Most of the time, thank God my community is getting more accepting here. But I'm sure I'm not the only one that the HIV, it always has to be dealt with in the closet and then it doesn't help for the mental illness when I'm being raped or, the trauma that goes through a day-to-day breaking through this wall to make other people see HIV is okay, but I still have to hide that part. And I can only talk about this much mental health because nobody understands it. Now that I know that it's out there, and I want to bring it here too. I want people to understand that we need to talk about the whole person, not just little aspects here and there. We need to address the whole issue. Probably talking too much. Thank you.
No, you're not. That's totally fine. Thank you. And actually, so we have another question in the chat box that's related, that as a woman living with HIV, do you feel like doctors discuss the whole woman? So I'm hearing, it sounds like some of you are saying no. Have any experiences where you do feel like doctors see you as a whole person, and what makes you feel that way?
This is Bree. I don't. To be honest, I didn't answer the last question, because I feel like a lot of the medical services that I receive are very segregated, if that makes sense. So like, I go to my HIV doctor, I go to my trans-related doctor, I go to all of these different doctors, right? And I feel like for me, when I go to any doctor, I feel like there's always a piece of me that I have to leave behind, whether it's like, I know for a fact that like people won't understand what I'm saying, or like my experience, the judgment comes off a lot. I recently had a doctor's appointment that was not HIV related. And when the doctor found out that I was living with HIV, the whole conversation changed. And he talked about me and my body as if it was dirty. And it wasn't anything that he said like deliberately, or he wasn't being malicious. It was just the way in which he was talking about my body, which then made me like retreat. So like for me, I just feel like a lot of times when I'm going and receiving medical care, I always have to leave a piece of me behind in order to like get the services that I want to receive in a way that's like comfortable, right? Or to like not have to like deal with like people's like facial expressions when it comes to these like issues that are like really near and dear to my heart.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add to this general topic?
Can we say the question again? What was, do we feel like physicians see the whole of us? Is that the question when it comes to?
Yeah, that was sort of a follow-up question to the first one. Do you feel like when you go to a doctor that they kind of see you as a whole person and treat you as a whole person?
Well, we are, research has proven that, especially with like Black women, physicians just tend to not initially believe us when we speak. So I think adding on HIV is just 10 times worse. I know for me, my personal experience has been what you equals you. So it took my physician a very long time to feel comfortable. Well, the truth of the matter is it took a long time for him to feel okay to tell me the truth, because he had to get over his fear that I would just rip off the condom and just start going crazy in life. Because, my personality already is like super like, fuck the world, sex positive. And so he was like, oh shit, when You Equals You comes out, she's gonna really go crazy. And it sounds, funny at the time, but I mean, initially my physician and I've had to work through him restoring body autonomy for myself and accepting the choices that I make, as much as he may not like it or may have concerns with it. So, also too, like a little tip for any woman who's listening on here too, your physicians are there to serve you. I'm not there to serve my physician. I'm not there to make him feel better. I'm not there to honor whatever it is I have to honor with him. He's there to serve me, and he's there to provide the best care for me. And I've had to, in some ways, like train him, I guess, I don't know how to say it in a nicer way, as to how to approach me. And if I ever felt like he just couldn't accept something I was doing or what have you, I spoke up. So if you are someone who's having issues with physicians, or feeling like your physician doesn't respect you or what have you, just remind yourself to stay centered, to center your needs, to center what you want to be done, to remind yourself that initially at the end of the day what's best for you, and don't let some man in a white lab coat make you feel like you're any less than. So that's something I've recently I've gone through with a physician, just worrying about my inability to have self-control, because I mean, we wouldn't want the world to burn now, would we?
Thank you so much for that. And that actually segues really nicely into the next question we have, which is how has You Equals You affected your mental health? And do you think doctors and or psychiatrists should share that message?
Hello? I feel like, me personally, You Equals You has affected my mental health in a positive way, because it taught me that it showed me that as long as I am able to take my medications and continue to stay in care, I don't have to transmitting the virus to anyone else. And, at least the HIV virus. Other STIs are a separate issue. And it also tells me that, as long as I'm in care, like, I'm not a threat to through HIV transmission to any other healthcare provider. But it's unfortunate that, the main healthcare providers that know about You Equals You is like the ones in the HIV field. I don't think like ER doctors know too much about You Equals You, which sucks, because like if you end up going to the ER and they got to learn your medications right, and you tell them you're on HIV meds, they side-eye you, but that's out of ignorance, because they don't know better. So it's like in a way, there has to be, I know there's some campaigns to go and spread the message about You Equals You to like community hospitals and stuff like that. I wish there was like a TV campaign or something to spread the message that way to the general public, so that people in the suburbs would be as educated on it as people like in big cities like San Francisco. So at least that way, general knowledge people would know, But I do understand that there are other STIs on the rise. But as far as HIV goes, I think You Equals You has for me a positive result. So that encourages me to continue taking my meds and continue taking care of me.
Thank you. And I should have mentioned, just in case anyone on here or watching this later is not familiar with You Equals You, that's undetectable equals untransmittable. And it's the scientific consensus that somebody who is adherent to their antiretrovirals and has a sustained undetectable viral load cannot transmit the virus to their sexual partners, even without condoms. So yeah, just in case anyone has not been told that by their doctors, because I know a lot of doctors don't tell you.
Hello. Mm-hmm.
Because they don't know no better.
They don't trust Black women. That's the problem. That's a separate issue.
True. It might be racist. Also, it's like a lot of ignorance going around too.
Yeah. I like that, Jenny, consensus. Scientific, that was fancy. I'm going to say that too. It is a scientific consensus that undetectable equals untransmittable. That's fancy. I'm going to use that. Thanks, Jenny.
There's a whole consensus statement that's been signed by the HIV researchers and doctors.
Just the word consensus just sounds legit. I'm going to get my vocabulary out.
Back to the question, if I could respond.
Of course.
I think that I am really excited about the U equals U campaign. I will say that I don't think it had an immediate effect on my mental health per se. I think one of the things that I just always think about as far as like my experience, I think there were a lot of people who were around in my life that helped support me to make sure that I was undetectable, right? And I don't feel like that everyone has those privileges. So although I do agree that this should be a campaign, and like I'm really happy that the science is actually like, the science is like behind us now, I also just want to just remind people that being undetectable and viral suppression takes like time, money, energy, and effort that a lot of people don't have access to. And so like, although I would love for everyone to be undetectable, right? I think for me, one of the things that I've just been finding out through my own personal HIV journey is that for me, I think as long as people feel good about themselves, right? And they're taking care of themselves in the best way possible, I think that should be a measure, right? And then I just also just worry about just how these campaigns for people's health could literally be used against people who don't have the means or the access to be able to like take care of themselves in a way that like science backs up, right? So although this campaign has been really helpful for me as an undetectable person, I just also really just uplift and think about a lot of the people that we possibly could be like leaving behind. And I'm like, I think about all of the people who, regardless of how hard they try, will never be able to obtain viral suppression. And so like, I like that science, but I think also we just need to be like mindful in our fights and just making sure that like, you know, we're not leaving people behind.
Thank you so much for lifting that up. That's really important and totally true. And that's one of the reasons, you know, that PWN works really hard on advocacy around healthcare too, because everyone deserves to have access to healthcare. It shouldn't be a privilege for, you know, folks who have the money for it. Great, thanks. So we have some more questions here. Does anyone use meditation and mindfulness practice awareness?
I meditate every day, and that's just a practice I've developed and been doing for like a while now. I think well over a year and a half, and it has done me wonders, and I really appreciate it. I do it once in the morning and then once at night, and then if I need to do it during the day, then I do it during the day. And then like I go to 12-step meetings, and some of those meetings are meditation meetings as well.
Okay. First side note, you guys are a little low. Like I have my volume all the way up, and I could hear Bree really well. Tondi and Jenny, I was having difficulty hearing you guys, so sorry. But some people say that meditation and prayer are different, and they're not to me, and that's just my personal opinion. There are times that I definitely pray like all the time. And you know what I consider for me meditation is that sitting quietly. So I do, you know, sit quietly, and I have to just like unplug and shut down, because as a people, we are very, very busy, and we find ourselves, sometimes we're even busy when we're just sitting down, maybe watching TV or, you know, whatever. It's just that we're always doing something. The mind is always going, to the point that you can't even get a really good night's sleep because unconsciously your mind is going. So sometimes, you know, I will literally, like, nothing going on, no music, no radio, no anything, just sit and be quiet and try to erase everything that's going on in my head so that there's just blank. It's just blank. And I find that that is really, really good a lot of times for me, because it gives me a moment to take that really deep breath, take it in and blow it out. So yeah.
I have a hard time shutting my brain off. So for me, meditating has been very hard. So there's been times where like I've literally sat in a room and like the noise that you normally don't think that you hear, like the refrigerator, the clock, you hear all of that stuff and you get easily distracted. One of the things that I found really helpful is that I sit with how I'm feeling for a minute and I find a song that either reminds me of that feeling or has something along the lines of the words of how I'm feeling in that song. And I start singing. And normally it starts out where I sing the song, how it plays on the radio, same tune, same beat, and then I find myself remixing it. And then I always try to remember a song that kind of that reminds me of a place that I don't want to be in, but takes me to another place. And so I like listen to it over and over again. So there's this song by Dave Matthews Band that I love a lot. It's called Crush. And it's about some guy who's sitting in a bar, like obsessing over somebody that he's like watching, and he's like singing a song to this person. And it's one of those songs that I listen to that automatically puts me in this place that makes me feel good, that like reminds me of good things. And it's literally become like my go-to song. So like, I also like am in this practice of really learning about different ways in which that I can like take care of myself and kind of remixing it in ways in which that works for me. One of the things that I thought was really challenging as someone who has practiced several different religions and, different like teachings and learnings was like, when people tell you stuff or when you read about stuff, you feel like it's full stop, right? Like, this is how you are a Christian, full stop, right? And I think the joy in being able to have availability to all these practices is to be able to like lean in, pull things from different directions and kind of like remix it, because it's all about like how you interpret it and how you display that into the world. So like for people who can't meditate, I just really implore you to find really great ways that can kind of, where it's not really like sitting still with yourself, but like taking you away from this place that you are in a current state. There's this really great show on Netflix called Atypical about a teenager with autism. And I learned something from him. When he gets really overwhelmed, he starts reciting the classes of penguins from Antarctica. And I thought it was the craziest thing ever. And like he had a nervous breakdown and he just started reciting the penguins over and over again, and that calmed him. And I was just like, wow, that's his meditation. That's what brings him back to his center. So I just really implore people to just really practice with these things and do the things that feel natural to you and that make you feel good.
I just started practicing meditation. I'm about 2 weeks into it. And anyone who knows me, I don't sit still ever. So I'm up to 3 minutes and it kills me, but actually a minute and a half of that I enjoy. So, but I'm starting somewhere and I do it in the morning and then at night.
Y'all, and I'm not really a panelist, but I will just say that the Unwinding Anxiety app actually was very helpful to me, and that's a mindfulness app. And I have some of I'm not using it anymore, but I learned a lot from it, and some of the things that it suggested I still use sometimes when I start feeling very anxious. So throwing that out there as well.
Is it Unwinding Anxiety?
Yeah.
I try anything.
I found it really, it's a mindfulness that like kind of helps. It gives you different sort of practices you can use to kind of take yourself, sort of like put yourself in the moment. and especially when your mind is kind of going a million miles an hour. And so it's helped calm me down quite a few times.
I'm using Headspace myself right now.
Oh, I think it's similar to that, actually.
Yeah.
From what I've heard. And so sort of along those same lines, there's a question, are there any innovations that have helped you with your mental health as a person living with HIV? Maybe new technologies or new treatments or new scientific discoveries? We already mentioned U equals U. Has the internet also helped anyone by connecting support networks? Is anyone using online counseling like Talkspace or BetterHelp?
I go to the batting cage. I never, no, seriously. When I really talk about like taking these things and remixing them, I was so angry one day, and I had this old ritual where I was like I would go to the thrift store and buy dishes and break them. And I was like, I don't want to spend money on dishes and like break them and have to clean it up and do all this extra stuff. And like literally going to the batting cage, like hitting a ball and like, with all of your might, like, I'm sorry. To answer your question, I think that there are a lot of great medical ways in which that like people can like, improve their mental health. But to be honest, I think there's more than enough free, fun resources that people can take advantage of, like that could really help. Like batting cages, like as someone who's like really angry and like really wanted to get it out, like $5, 20 minutes, I felt like $1 million afterwards. A little sore in the arms, but it was totally worth it. And you get a workout too. But like, yeah, just thinking of new ways, like taking a walk. I started rock climbing, which is something I didn't think I would like. I'm afraid of heights, but I think once you get up there and you start seeing the world from a different view, you're like, oh, I can do these things. So I would just suggest looking outside of like medical stuff. If you have the resources to be able to like, afford to and access those different medical ways of like taking care of your mental health, do that. But like there is a vast world out here full of resources, and I just really implore people to take advantage of those.
I have a tip.
Hello? Oh, go ahead, Tiffany.
Oh, you can go. It's okay. I'll go after.
Oh,
You can go.
Thank you. I do yoga. That's one way, and I color. I have hella coloring adult books that I use, and that helps. As far as like medication and all that, I try to steer away from, I have this hip oil that I take, and it helps me sleep, and it helps calm me down, and it helps with the pain too, like the sciatic pain. That's it.
Oh, he's gonna pull me over. No, he's not. Okay, we're fine. Sorry.
You didn't get pulled over. Was there something you wanted to?
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I thought I had on mute. My bad. So for me, and if I get pulled over, I just stay on the line, just record this whole thing. But for me, I know it sounds weird now, but community, like finding your community specific to what you're looking for. So what really helped me to like stay on meds and like not die and harm myself and all that stuff was finding my people. So when I went to the Youth Initiative program through NMAC, and when I started to do part of Block, and I met like Linda and Tammy and Jenny and everybody, when I got introduced to PWN, or I got introduced to youth-led leadership workshops in HIV world, my mental health got better because I met a whole bunch of people who were in my same age bracket or same gender, whatever it is, who could just understand what it was like from this point, from my perspective at 20-something, how I can interpret HIV. And as I get older, I meet more folks, right? So like, in the beginning, I needed intensive kind of support, right? Like I would call Gina Brown, who is one of my mentors, almost every day, and it would be one thing after another. And after like a year or so, now I'm looking at, parents in HIV, like where are all the families, right? Where are the mamas and the daddies and the neithers, or the overall parents, because that's my next phase in my life, right? Now that I have my medical down and my job is going pretty well, my dating life is coming next. So what helps me decrease my anxieties is making more, in this case, like in my case, more parent friends, right? And looking into like what it looks like for me if I wanted to get pregnant in the next year or two and stuff like that. So kind of like what Bree was saying, sometimes you don't always have to go to medical. Sometimes it's right outside. It's just like finding a group that you can join, or like the batting cages was a good point. And especially for me, like writing was really good. And not only just writing, but so I also work for the body. So it was nice to have, in this case, Kenyon read over my stuff and help me to kind of process what I was trying to say. So before things are published, him and I talk about, well, what did you mean to call your mom? What did you mean by that thought when you wrote it? Did you mean that she was this or that? So it's just nice to kind of have someone bounce back my thoughts. So if you're out in the world and you feel like you're the only one in your neighborhood that has HIV, you're probably wrong. I just Googled one day things that were happening, and stuff popped up. I YouTubed, and that's where I found Kamaria with the faces of HIV. So I mean, there's like lots of stuff out there. If you don't want to feel like you're by yourself, because that's the hard part, is me and Broward County. I know that Jenny is in Miami, but if I didn't know that, I would think that I would be the only person in South Florida who was living with HIV. Obviously, that's not true, but when you don't know these people, you feel kind of alone. So, you know, community. For me, it was actually having somebody there to like talk to and physically meet up with, and to learn tools from, and also to have like the program set up that puts you in groups of other people is really good too. So if you're a young person, you're between the ages of 18 and 26, and apply for Block, apply for Youth Initiative Program. If you're a young same-gender living man, apply for Baby and NACIM and all these fun stuff, because then you don't feel like you're by yourself.
So I've never heard of Talkspace or BetterHelp, and I'm gonna look into that outside of this. But I also do adult coloring. It is so therapeutic. It is, when I tell you, it, for me personally, when it's just like, I don't want to do anything, I don't want to call anyone, or I can't reach anyone, I have a very thick adult coloring book and lots of colored pencils. And I will find a picture in my book that really just speaks to me, and I color, and while I'm coloring, nothing else is going on in life to me. It's like I'm in this tiny little bubble by myself with my coloring book and my colored pencils, and I am coloring, and it makes me feel so good. I had no idea how important adult coloring books are. You know, as when we were younger, it was just like, hey, yeah, I want to color, but this is my therapy. And, you know, like Tandy mentioned, I'm not into the meds at all. I'm not going to take them. My doctor already knows, don't even think about prescribing anything like that, because I'm not going to do it. I'll find other resources. I've also connected myself with a group of people who, I guess we call them conscious people. And, you know, a lot of them are into meditating and chakra uses and things like that. And I'm learning quite a bit from them. And I'm also learning that the energy that I surround myself around, being so positive, really makes me feel good. And it helps me to not focus so much on the negative aspect of my life. So all that to say, I would suggest finding yourself a hobby, like Bree talked about batting. That would definitely be something that you can get a lot of frustrations off, is burn some calories, all of that. But definitely find a hobby for yourself that will help distract you from those everyday things that are on the negative side of your thoughts.
And then there's a question about the value of peer support. How have you experienced peer support? And also, just I would like to add to the question, sort of keeping in mind that in some places there are a lot of support groups, like in-person support groups that you can go to, and in other places, especially sort of outside of big cities, that may not be available, especially for women. So just sort of like thinking also beyond just in-person support groups, but are there also other, you know, ways of connecting with peers, you know, virtually as well as in person?
The peer support, I'll just go on ahead, but the peer support is huge to me because though we're individuals and, you know, we have our individual thoughts and situations, honestly, we all go through basically the same thing. My peer support, it is some of the people in my circle who are not living with HIV or familiar with it at all, but I find a lot of peer support with, you know, my sisters through PWN, to be honest with you. I get encouragement when I follow, you know, some of the sisters and see the great things that they're doing, because sometimes, you know, as an advocate and someone who's been, you know, in this fight for so long, you kind of, sometimes I'll have a feeling like, am I doing the right thing? Should I still be doing this? Oh, what I'm doing is not making a difference. And then sometimes I need a reminder. So my peers who are also in this, when I go on their pages or get newsletters and emails and some of the great things that they're doing, it encourages me and it makes me feel good as a woman, as a person, as an advocate. So I thrive off of, you know, the peer support, definitely.
Yeah, I think peer support is important. And I also recognize that it's challenging for some folks, considering like they might be in like rural areas or in areas that like, you know, have very little structural support for people living with HIV. So I think what we're doing now, just being a part of this conversation with PWNCares, is like one way that we can like keep, you know, build that those communities of like-minded people. I was just reading through the comments and just seeing everyone's like different comments and how people were connecting. So I think, you know, this could be a way to help people who may not have the resources and the access to like people who have shared experiences to like, you know, to grow and to navigate. And actually, it just reminded me to be more intentional about when I'm building relationships with people and like, you know, being more intentional about building relationships with people, because I now recognize that not everyone has the same access to support that some of us also have access to.
In my area, it's Angel again. In my area here, there is a lot of support for gay men. We did have an ongoing women's support group, which I was like, I guess we were the original members. And since we stopped being able to utilize their space at the clinic, so now there's like really, unless you travel far, it's starting to be like, unless you start traveling far, I go to Tampa or somewhere, and not driving, not that I don't have a license, just don't have a car, but not driving, it seems to be, and plus with the mental health, you know, different issues come into play depending on how far a support group is, you know, getting there. But what we did is we're meeting now outside of the park, but, you know, we haven't, how do you invite people there? You know, how do you invite people, you know, to a secret forum? Again, there we are with the mental health, with going to the doctor and only bringing half of us there. You know, we have a support group. I have 5 strong women, 10 strong, what is there? Maybe I think there's 16 of us, but nobody wants to tell anybody anything. And I'm the only one with a loud mouth, you know, so it's just really awkward. But that is my support group, besides being involved in all of the things that PWN and the Well Project do. You know, without that, and without, like Alicia said, you know, following the newsletters and different things, you know, that is my peer support group. That's my nourishment for my soul that I get with like-minded people. And some days when I can't turn the computer on, it's just like, oh my gosh, my support group is so far away. But
hello, can you guys hear me? Yeah, in regard to the question, so in some areas out here, well, the city has more support groups than where I stay. Where I stay is we had a women's support group and it stopped, but it's like the support is scattered. But if you go to like Oakland, where I think World is the only women where they have women specific support group. I get my support group, like initially I had to drive to World because there was no women's meetings out here. And then online, there is one support group that meets like once a month on the second Thursdays. But yeah, I find that the experiences that the support I got from the support groups, even though it was a drive, which is not bad, like 30 minutes, it helped me because I saw women living in actual life with HIV in different perspectives, and I was able to like do different workshops to learn about things like that I wouldn't learn at other places, like about disclosure, like about what's going on in the HIV community. That's how I learned about PWN, and then became a member and got involved in policy calls with PWN. And I really admire a lot of what the women do across the country in the chapters. And it's really inspirational, and I think peer support is vital. And because isolation is what really kills in mental illness, because you feel like your situation is unique to you and that nobody will understand. But if you're able to connect with a peer, whether it be through the email or through phone calls or physically going to a group, you're able to see that, oh my God, there's this woman and she's living with HIV and she's doing it in grace and style. And there's so many ways you can do it. You just have to find your own way. But being around my peers helped me to see that was possible, especially going to like the conferences. Like that really helped me too. Like I love conferences. I have so much fun. I wish I could make a career out of going to freaking conferences. And to phone calls like this too is cool too. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. That actually segues into this question, which was actually one that I wanted to ask if no one else did. So I'm glad that it actually popped up in the Q&A box. So can you all speak more about how being involved in advocacy has affected your mental health? Is it energizing? Is it exhausting? Positive Women's Network is an advocacy organization. We're not a support group, although our members find a lot of support with us, but we are an advocacy organization, and all of the panelists here are advocates and activists as well, many of them. So yeah, how does being involved with advocacy affect your mental health?
Okay. Go ahead, Alicia.
No, I want you to go because I want to let another panelist speak first.
Oh no. The question again. Okay, where's the question again? How does advocacy affect my mental health?
Exactly.
It keeps me, I like to isolate. Even though I like to bounce around, I bounce around in isolated places. And having the advocacy work and having the women that I've reached around my community, it pulls me out. I have to do things. I have to become involved. I have to be, Barb, am I allowed to say somebody's name? Meaningfully involved, I can be involved over the phone constantly, but as I got deeper into the advocacy work and I start learning more through the webinars, and I'm just encouraging other people to talk about HIV. Let's stop pretending it's a dirty word. And it makes me go out more. I do have to go out, so it helps me in the isolation. It is definitely when I'm depressed and I don't want to do anything, and I get that one call from that girl who just wants me to come over and talk to her, or something's happening and they need my help in the community, and then I go, okay, I never say no. I don't say no, and I go. So it has been very positive as far as I believe my mental health, because I have struggled through a lot, and I just don't quit. I'm like, no. I think it's rewarding, and it's also very draining too, depending on where you sit on that day. I think it's all in perspective, all in the support you're getting for that week. If you break it down into days or weeks or a month, How much work are you putting in? How much are you giving back to yourself? You know, what are you putting back in your cup? You know, are you doing your support groups or meetings, or are you giving that stuff up, or are you hiding when you're done? I think it can be a very balanced schedule, but I think it is very uplifting and also draining. For a good cause.
So I have an opinion. I don't know if anybody else wanted to go. Nope. Can I go? Okay. So advocacy is amazing. It's a little, so at first it's exciting because I think I had people pull me into it. You know, I'm very good friends with Kamaria, and she was really big on Zero Project, and then I went to HINAC. So in the beginning it was great. And then I think just as like a barrier to protect, so I was talking about mental health, I think as not a barrier, I think as a way to protect my sanity, I don't think I went into like in depth about, or I never thought about how susceptible I am to falling into the criminal system as a person living with HIV, as a person who is a millennial and sex positive and all that stuff, until I went to HINAC and I realized that I too can fall into some situations if I'm not educated on laws and statutes in my particular state. So it was good because now I'm informed, but now I'm going through a sort of paranoia, but like, so oh yeah, HINAC, HIV and a crime. So like, yes, we're working to make laws better, but in the meantime, like, how do I survive this, right? So now I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to become a third-degree felon. So how can I have all the amazing sex I want, or how can I date and have all the partners I want? How can I live as I want to live within a system that is inherently trying to not let me live, right? And also I'm a person of color and I'm a black girl, so there's situations in that. But anyway, one way that I've helped myself to deal is to do a lot of an advocacy work, but also like internalized work and talking about, you know, like I talked to Kamaria a lot after HINAC because I felt really worried that like I'm gonna fall into the same things that some of the panelists at HINAC fell into, and how do I avoid that? Because it's one thing to hear about, you know, victims in the criminals, I don't say victims, but folks who have been persecuted, and it's another thing to actually think that I could fall into that too, and how do I make sure that I'm doing all that I can do without driving myself into isolation, kind of what Angel said, right? Like, while we're working on making things better, do I just not date and have sex and just like stick to myself, or, you know, do I push the envelope and make sure and show people that we're out here, that we're dating, that we're just like everybody else, that we're doing all this fun stuff? So right now it's like it's like a give and take. Like I'm putting in the work to make things better, but in the meantime I have to navigate the best that I can on days where I think that I'm getting way too worried, or that I am allowing systems to oppress me. I lean onto my community, which happen to be Black and brown women, which I'm really excited about, to kind of help me. So on days where I get really worried, I just try to help out more, or I think about what I'm really worried about and try to celebrate the work that we're doing, because everybody who's in the HIV decriminalization arena is doing great work. I love that they're doing that work. It's important work, and if you should get involved, I think everyone should get involved if they're able to.
Awesome. Yeah, I can definitely say that once I started attending conferences, it was very, very rewarding, especially in the beginning when I felt like I was by myself in the city that I live in, and advocating in the counties, and then I just really felt by myself. There's a lot of advocates, but it's like when agencies, organizations, events needed a speaker, while I was honored to be the one that they contacted, after a while it was like, gosh, I know I'm not the only one. Like, come on. I just can't be the only one in all of these North Carolinian counties. So once I started going to the conferences, it was just like, I don't know, a kid in Toyland. I just have to say, use that analogy, because it was very, very amazing to see all of these awesome women advocates from all over the place doing such great things on different levels. And, you know, not one person knows everything. So you learn a whole lot, and you can share a whole lot. So it's just like all of this piggybacking back and forth. But also these conferences are not just for us to go and sit and suck up information. It's a lot of work to do. So that for me is when it's just like, oh my gosh, because I'm excited about the work. But then when I go home and realize, oh, the conference work is not the only work I have all this other stuff. So I'm trying to fit in the things that I agreed to do along with the other things that have to do with my life. And then it's just like, okay, now I'm getting overwhelmed. But that's when we go into our self-care. That's when we tap into our peers, and so that we can get a balance.
I think for some of us, I think some of us have different relationships to advocacy. I say I will have a love-hate relationship with advocacy. When Jenny originally posed the question, my original thought was like war, right? So for some people, this is like their lives, right? Some people can have the privilege to be able to detach themselves from some parts of the work, right? But for other people, they're constantly living in it, right? So like, I think one of the things that I've kind of learned in my 10 years of being an advocate is that I just have to continuously remind myself that sometimes advocacy spaces are worse than the real world, if that makes sense. And I think one of the things that I've kind of just been cognizant of is that I don't think it's really the people's fault who are like in the movement or in the advocacy spaces, right? But I really think it really boils back down to mental health, right? And so like for some people who this is their lives, right, where the things that they're fighting for are really pressing to them because it has an immediate effect on like how they live their lives day to day, right? I could see how for those people it's more pressing, it's more real. The stakes are larger, right? And for people who have the ability to be able to walk in and out or can become detached from it, right? They don't necessarily always see that same fight. So for me, I think one of the things that I've been just mindful of in advocacy spaces is just like kind of like protecting myself, right? And like really being able to be in those spaces and recognize when I have the energy, when I don't have the energy, and when to remove myself from those spaces. Because I do think for a lot of people, there is no separation. So they're walking into advocacy spaces with the trauma that they've left home with, and they're leaving those advocacy spaces with that same trauma, right? Mm-hmm. And so like I said, I just want to also acknowledge that for some people, like advocacy is really invigorating, really empowering, and for other people, it's really draining.
Can I add to that too? Also to that, so boundaries are really good and they're really, really smart, and kind of what Bree was saying, like for some folks, this is their world, and you should always be an advocate, right? But also too, it doesn't hurt to take a step back, and if you feel yourself putting more work into it and maybe it's harming yourself or whatever it is, to be able to step back and allow your community to step in for you. So yes, advocacy is very important, but so is celebrating what you've been through. So is sometimes not always going to every single rally or every single conference. And also giving a piece of the pie. So like, I don't have to apply to every single youth initiative program. If I know somebody else who wants to get in, I can pass on that and say, hey, I know a program, come join it too. So you don't have to be at every single conferences. You don't have to be at every single summit or every single program. If you want to pass on the torch, I highly suggest you do that. It provides community because you're bringing other folks to the table. Because whatever anybody else, I believe that everybody can fit at the table. I don't think that you have to set certain people. I think we can all get a chair and sit together. So if you know opportunities, if you've been to Age Watch 3 times and you're like, you know what, I know somebody else who probably should go, be their guide and help people. I'm doing that now. If I'm helping people get into this work and helping to guide them to make it easier than what I had. That also provides me with feeling good with helping my community, but also I don't have to be everywhere all the time, because I can't be everywhere all the time. And it's good to show different faces and different movement spaces too, different perspectives, keeps things fresh, keeps things new, versus having the same person at every single conference, every single year, feeling the same way, and maybe just bringing the same energy to try to pass that on too. So, and also what helps with mental health and me is telling the world what I've learned and all the tools. I mean, being completely transparent and making sure that I'm passing on the things that I know or the things that I learn or so on and so forth. So, maybe the next HINAC I won't be at because I went to the first one, but I feel good to know that I sent a couple more people who've never been to HINAC at all, who were just like needing that information because, maybe I got what I got too. So have boundaries too. Advocacy is important, but so is celebrating your success in mental health and taking a step back if you need it. And also whatever information is passed on to you to tell the community. Don't just kind of hold it in. If you know some good news, spread it along.
Add something? I saw you.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
I think I agree totally with a lot of what was said earlier about, spreading the news to other people and sharing it and then creating boundaries, healthy boundaries. And that's like the everyday thing that I do, like I'm learning to do every day because I'm the type of person, I want to do everything, but in real life, that's like impossible and it's not even healthy. So setting those boundaries is like important for me. But how advocacy has been positive in my health has helped me build confidence within myself. Like going to lobby days in Sacramento has been the funnest thing because I was able to take part in conversations about advocacy that like helps my community get funding for things like PrEP, for things like transgender economic development, things like that otherwise I wouldn't have been a part of. So, and then I go back and I share this information with other advocates, and it makes you feel like connected in a sense to something, and I love being a part of PWN's policy calls, and even their policy fellowship was amazing. It's taught me like a lot about, like what really goes on in policy and all that, and just how important my voice is, how important women living with HIV voices is, and how they should come out the shadows and should be heard, So that's what advocacy has done for me. But I do realize the caveats are, you need moderation or balance, for self-care, and burnout is real. So the best thing for me is just to be mindful of that and realize. I think it was said earlier about how important it is to be mindful of the fatigue and take care of yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Boundaries are really important, I think. And just so we are at time, so we will be finishing up. One thing I kind of want to leave you with, I read an article probably a couple of years ago at least, but I thought it was really insightful. It was about advocacy as a form of therapy, and sort of the perspective that was coming from is that a lot of times in like individual therapy, folks are encouraged to sort of like look at themselves and what can they change about themselves to make themselves feel better, whereas advocacy acknowledges that there are actually factors in the world around us, that everything is not just about us and what we need to change about ourselves, but that there are things happening around us that are affecting us, and that we can take action to change those things as well. And so it's sort of it can be empowering, to actually be able to acknowledge that not everything is our own fault or a consequence of some, something in our brain or something in our personality, but that there are actually things outside of us that are holding us down or negatively affecting us, and that we can change those things. So I think I thought that was really important. And so for anyone who is new to PWN on here, or who is watching this later and is new to PWN, we encourage you to become a member. You can jump in head first, or you can just start slowly and try joining a work group call. We have 3 different work groups, and we also, I think actually more than that now, I think we have like 5 now. So there's lots of ways to get involved. So the first step would be to sign up as a member on our website. So that's pwn-usa.org. I encourage folks to do that. If you're not already a member, join us. And with that, we'll go ahead and close it out. I want to thank my panelists so much for being here and for sharing so generously of yourselves. It's definitely not the easiest topic in the world to talk about, and we really appreciate you being willing to put yourselves out there like that so that other folks can, benefit from it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you. That was great.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank
Bree,
you.
you're amazing. I love Bree.